Well, good evening, Rear Admiral retired Gary Best, my brother, former Chief of Staff of Guyana. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and welcome once again to CWS As It Is.
Thank you, Selwyn. Thank you very much.
You know, why don't you start by telling us who is this man that we have come to know as Gary Best? For our non-Guyanese listeners and those who might not be acquainted with you.
Well, Selwyn, Gary Best is the recent past Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force. I was born in Campbellville, raised by a single mom, attended Campbellville Secondary School, Campbellville Primary School, and then North Georgetown Secondary School. And thereafter, I worked for a very short while, about 6 months, at the Guyana Marketing Corporation just after I left school. And then I went back to private studies, completed my A-levels, and then I joined the Guyana Defense Force, where I spent 34 years and retired in 2013, September. Along that way, I went to law school, practiced, became an attorney at law, and still pursuing some academic studies at the moment, which includes my PhD in international relations.
Awesome.
I think that in essence is, and I've recently endorsed the coalition as the best political party to run Guyana now and in the future. That in summary is Gary Best at this moment.
It is interesting that you mentioned that. First, let me congratulate you, but let me also ask you this. What inspired you to endorse the coalition?
It's an interesting question. I pondered on it before I made the endorsement. But particularly what really caused me to do that is I looked at Guyana and I looked at the fissures over the years at the political level in our country, and I recognized that it had to do with division, in particular division, and division based on ethnicity. When I looked at our recent political development coming out of the Partnership for National Unity under Mr. David Granger, and what was coming out of the AFC under Mr. Moses Nagamutu and his team, I recognized they were both talking about the same thing, which is unity politics. And we should have unity in our development, and we should bring our races together under one political umbrella for the betterment of Guyana. When I became convinced that that is what they wanted to do, that resonated with me, particularly what I believe in, my socio-political beliefs and my nationalistic principles. And based on that, I offered an endorsement to the coalition.
You know, you travel now. You travel among within various academic circles. You yourself is part of a think tank, Lord's think tank, where you guys write a lot of papers and so on various issues within the region and the hemisphere.
Yes.
What is the discourse within those circles that even more encourage you that this is the right decision and this is the right time for such a transformation?
Well, in fact, Selwyn, in the academic circle, since I retired in the academic circle, we were able to identify at different points of entry in Guyana's politics that one could enter to try to make a change. We identified that not particularly through our writings, but our engagement with different stakeholders and different actors within Guyana and within the Caribbean, and also looking at some best practices across the region. So I think that I was influenced by best practices within the regional hemisphere, that is beyond the Caribbean, but within the regional hemisphere. And I was also inspired by some writings that I've read personally, but not so much writings that I have done and published in the public domain. It's more about, I was driven by my personal beliefs and my personal beliefs and my personal care and love for this this country that I was born in, and today I love to the death.
Take us into Guyana's current elections atmosphere. And what gives you hope that Guyana is positioned for unity and unity development?
I, I would like to emphasize this point into why I believe it's poised for unity. It has to do with the integrity of the two individuals that are involved in the coalition, the two leaders. This is not to say that their followers do not have integrity, but I need to focus on the two leaders. I think when one looks at David Grange and when one looks at Musa Nagamutu, they can sense integrity. I sense it in their actions, and I sense it in what they say, and I sense it in their body language. That that is a big selling point. Then beyond that, I sense it in their own families that both candidates have placed their spouses alongside them, and now in the campaign speaking on women's issues. They're bold enough to go out there and they have a following. So what the candidates are saying, what their political parties are saying, what their spouses are saying, all that together, that has convinced me that we're moving on the threshold towards unity. And further, Selvin, I do not believe this is just for the 2015 elections. I think we see the beginning of a movement in Guyana for unity politics, unity development, a unity in everything that we do. I think it's a movement, and I would like to contribute to that movement that would shift us away from race-based politics and move us to unity-based politics.
This particular movement you speak of, it just doesn't suddenly start. Movements are born and then they gradually develop into a crescendo.
Yes.
Did you, perchance, notice the beginnings of a movement, perhaps during your tenure as chief of staff, or, well, just, did you notice this, and when?
But if I can go back a bit, I think when I read Ali Majid's book about the conciliation and unity talks between the late Forbes Burnham and the late Dr. Jagan in the 80s, there was a deep desire on the part of Dr. Jagan and Forbes Burnham to try to bring the two political parties together. Forbes Burnham died, and that process died with him. So the record shows that there were unity talks and very serious talks between the two political parties. When the PUP came into power and under Dr. Jagan, there wasn't much being said. It was very, very limited. And then when Dr. Jagan died and the new leadership of the PUP came to power, one could have seen they virtually abandoned any aspect at all of dealing with unity talks. But the opposition, as they transitioned, started to talk more and more about national front politics, but abandoning the winner take all politics. So I think the opposition, the PNCR, kept that in the public domain. And then when the AFC was formed, the AFC joined that talk also and joined that conversation that we should have unity politics, we should have national front government. So yes, I can say from the time the PNC changed to the PNCR and then evolved into APNU, to some extent, I have seen evidence in the public domain of a genuine desire to move towards national front politics and also within the AFC. So indeed, I have seen it.
There's a question, a curiosity,
Yes.
Whether this atmosphere, this movement that we are witnessing here, this desire for unity and transformation, is it because of the political rhetoric of the leaders of the two parties, or is it that the country, the people of themselves, are so tired and so strained of what they have of the status quo, that the desire is strong, or is it a combination of both? What is your, perspective on it?
My perspective is that I think the people in the country, the people want a change. I think Guyanese, in the main, would like to see a change in our politics, a movement from race-based politics to unity politics, a movement that reflects and clearly demonstrates that the country belongs to all of us and that the resources of this nation will be shared amongst all of us. I think that's what the Guyanese would like. I think the average Guyanese person who's below minimum wage or struggling with minimum wage would like to see a better life. I think the young female out there, the single parent, single mother, head of a household, would like to see that there's much more available to her to take care of her children. I think the average Guyanese is not satisfied with the kind of governance he or she has received over the decades and really genuinely wish a change. It's a change starting from the bottom, not from the top, and not driven by rhetoric, but driven by a natural desire of people wishing to have a change.
Guyana, when I think of Guyana sometimes, the metaphor that comes to mind is of an elastic band that stretches and carries whatever the burden Guyana is carrying and carry whatever load that makes up that burden. But do you believe, Rear Admiral retired, that Guyana can afford another decade of not changing, of no transformation? You think the country can carry that load?
I do not think so. I think we're very close to a tipping point. And I believe that's why we have this mushrooming of the desire for change. I do not think that the country can afford not benefiting from any kind of progress for the people. Now, there is progress in Guyana for a small group of persons. There are people who are benefiting in Guyana. People are becoming extremely rich, and the rest of us are remaining very poor. So I think we're close to a tipping point, and I think that is why we have this mass movement of people wanting to have change. And I do not believe that Guyana can afford another decade of non-transformation in its economy, non-transformation in its political systems, non-transformation in the provision of goods and services to its people. I sincerely doubt it.
From where you sit, your experience, your knowledge, how does Guyana benefit socially, politically, economically, and in a national security from a united country?
But if we agree that a house divided cannot stand, and that unity is what we require, what I think unity will bring to the average Guyanese, to the working class Guyanese, unity will bring equity, it will bring fairness, it will bring justice, it will bring empowerment, and those are some of the value-free ideals that people need in the country. I don't think anyone can challenge peace. I don't think one can challenge equity. I think unity and a recognition that we all one in Guyana, we cut from the same cloth, will result in equitable sharing of the resources amongst the people in the country. It will result in righteousness in everything that we do as a nation. So I think a fundamental principle is unity. And I believe unity politics will definitely redound to the betterment of the people of this country.
When you think of the depth, the breadth and depth of poverty in Guyana, and all the various social ills, the health, economic, education, and all these different areas, what resonates with you as a Guyanese? How do you feel personally when you look around you and you look at the landscape of poverty?
Selwyn, this is a very touching question. Sometimes when I look around at what is happening in Guyana, I feel as if I have too much. I feel as if I myself have too much when I look at my brothers and sisters and what they are going through. It hurts me personally to see people living in poverty and unable to do better. It hurts me personally to see people believe and feel that they're beaten to the ground and there's no hope. It hurts me personally when people have lost their self-esteem and have virtually given up, believing that there's nothing left in this country. And it hurts me personally when people think only about leaving Guyana and not staying to serve Guyana. And that has driven me to my endorsement to see really that indeed there's betterment in my country. What hurts me more that sometimes I believe seven I have too much and they have too little. And I try my best to see how much I can share and offer and work with my brothers and sisters in this country to make their lives better. But it really hurts me at the personal level to see that better is not being done when I know that better can be done.
In any society that is, our history has taught us this, that is going through this kind of change and being plagued with poverty and hunger and so on, there's no greater force than when the people, especially among the poor, decide to stand up
Precisely.
and aim for change.
Correct.
But also in Guyana, from what I've been learning, is that there is a mass or an epidemic of despair and hopelessness. Do you see the importance of restoring that hope among the masses? I know those who can speak, those who can articulate their fears, their desires and wants will be listened to and will be heard. But my personal fear is that the masses, those who cannot really speak up for themselves, might not be heard, I may not be listened to and paid attention to. What can you tell us in the diaspora and people outside that you see, that you believe will create a mass transformation rather than just for the benefit of the few?
And that's an excellent question because it goes back to our political culture and what has happened in Guyana over the last the last 2 decades, and particularly if one wants to go even further, what has happened in the 3 decades prior. And there may be a general view that the new government in Guyana may very well do exactly what this government is doing, and that is a real fear that people should have. But I believe that the the president in waiting and the prime minister in waiting will rise above petty politics, rise above racial division, and deliver, uh, perhaps for the second time in our history, to its people. I believe that. I believe we have a structure that was developed within the Commons Board Accord that created the coalition that would ensure the major ethnic groups feel satisfied that their leaders are working in their favor. I would be naive to say that there may not be persons who may try to work in their own personal interests. But I do believe that the leaders themselves have the strength of character to have them removed from government and from its governance and ensure that their government, our government, the new government works towards the benefit of these people. So it comes down to the integrity of the leader. As I said earlier, I believe that integrity resides in them, and it is that integrity, that leadership, and that headship of the coalition that will drive the new action, new thinking, a new um, and a new sense of where we need to go in Guyana. And that direction is to ensure that our people, right down to the security guard, to the street, to the person who clean the site, to the street, to the person who clean the street, to the domestic workers, that they benefit from the riches, untold riches, I would say, of this country.
You've been around for 2011 the elections, and there was a similar kind of euphoria. There was people marching and getting out to vote and so on. What is different this time, Gary? What are you noticing?
I think there's more intensity now. I think now there's more intensity in the campaign. I think there's more surety among the Guyanese voter. Though there is a group out there of voters who are still unsure, who are still waiting to be convinced by the political leaders that this is the direction they should go in. There is that group out there, the uncertain group. But I think that the mood of the country has changed. I think the mood is extremely positive, and I think we should also remember that together both parties could have formed the government if the Constitution had allowed them to do it then. So they had to form the coalition before this time around. So if the Constitution could have allowed them then, they would have formed the government. So people of Guyana know that together they won the last time, but they couldn't form the government. So I think people are convinced that together they will win this time and form the government because they've made the agreement prior to the election that they will form a government based on the total calculation of both sets of votes.
When
So
you
I think
think,
that is resonating well within the Guyanese vote.
when you think of how important a unity government is, how important a coalition is to accomplish that, and that there is this general, this mass desire for it, do you believe that the current and past governments might have aided, I mean, this seems kind of ironic to say this, but might have aided in our people, our nation, coming together as a united, as one people? Do you think without the pressures, without the disparities, the economic disparities and so on, and the widening gaps, economic widening gaps, that this would have been possible today?
I don't think it would have been possible. I think you're absolutely correct. I think it's the economic disparities, the fact that quite a lot of Guyanese are living at the poverty line, the fact that quite a lot Guyanese are leaving the country, people are not staying to build the country. I think those disparities, the inequitable distribution of resources, I think, yes, that has contributed to this movement towards unity. And I believe if the government has been genuinely delivering to its people, we wouldn't have a mass movement towards unity politics in Guyana. I mean, our history is peculiar. I think if you look back at our history, we were, African Guyanese were transplanted here against their will. And the Indo-Guyanese came here out of a colony. India was a colony, so I don't think they wanted to come here freely, but they were encouraged to come here. So we have to look at our history. And we were all one people together, and then we were divided politically. And one must not be naive to know that the colonial powers had a lot to do with that too. So I think everything is timely now, that now is the time to come together. Now is the time we must return to our fold. I think the People's National Congress thought it alone could have ruled Guyana, led Guyana. It tried its best. And I think that's the folly of the PPP, felt that they too can do it. And neither has achieved that objective. So what's the next best alternative? To come together and do it together so the people can see that the political apparatus of the country is unified, the head is unified, and therefore the nation feels more comfortable following that path as opposed to follow a path where either the PNCR or APNO wins the election separately, or even the AFC wins it separately, or the PPC wins it separately. I think together we can do a much better job in developing Guyana, and I think that's what is driving this movement.
You know, when you speak so eloquently about this, and I think about our history, political history, and I'm saying, fate must mock us sometimes, because it seems as though these two forces, the PNC and the PPP government, these two forces have pushed against this shell that the Guyanese people have found themselves in, this shell of lethargy and apathy, and shell of least resistance, and crack that shell and forge what we are witnessing, the birth of something new and transformative that we are witnessing here today. And I personally am hopeful. I am happy. I really am. And I want to reflect and not say we should blame either party or beat up on them, because in some way or the other they have conspired with fate to give to us what we really need to move this country forward. But I'll leave that up to the historians and the social scientists to make a determination. But Rear Admiral, when I sit and speak with you, privately or publicly, as we are tonight, I am always moved because I know that I am going to learn something. And I am trying to find a question to really extract from you this deep knowledge that you have in the academic sphere. So we can share with our listeners. And what has been happening recently in your think tank? What type of conversations and debates have you been having that can sort of encourage the diaspora to really pay attention to Guyana and perhaps return?
Well, what we've been doing recently in the think tank is really trying to determine what is it that Guyana needs to do to be different and to be better. And I think what we found is that we need to look at our governance structure, and not so much the government, but the governance structure.
Mm-hmm.
And in looking at governance structure, I think what we found is that when you look at how we are governed, we recognize there's a big difference between leading and ruling. We need to decide early: do we want to have a ruling class or someone leading us? And I think we recognize that in the years of the People's National Congress, the outcry from the opposition, particularly our Indo brothers, is that they felt they were being ruled and not led. And I think the same outcry is coming from the opposition. Our Guyanese brothers, particularly those PNC supporters, felt that within the last 20 years, 20 to 23 years, they felt they had been ruled and not being led by the government. Hence the unity movement, hence the coming together. So we were discussing it, and we figure it lies in the governance structure, that we need to move government from central to regional. We need to have true local government, decentralized government. That is going to bring governance to the people within their communities. Mm-hmm. In Guyana, government is central. Nothing particularly happens at the community level because the resources are located at central government. So the Minister of Local Government really is the instrument that prevents local government from functioning, as opposed to encouraging local government. So we have to change our political structure so that the regional chairmen across the nation will have the resources to run their regions. And we have to decentralize power, decentralize economic incentives to the regional chairmen so they can run their regions. Mm-hmm. So people in the regions can determine who their officials should be through local government elections. So we found that the governance structure is what is more important than the actual government in our recent discussions in the think tank.
What does this May elections really mean to you personally?
But for me personally, some people say it's a do or die election. And you people say that. A lot of people say that if there's no change now, they're going to pack up and leave and live somewhere else because this is the do or die. But for me, it really means that. To me, it means that Guyana is at the cusp of a real change, in a new direction that would last for decades. And I pray that behind this movement there's sufficient talent remaining in the country and sufficient energy to encourage the diaspora to be part of the development of Guyana. The diaspora doesn't have to be here physically. There are ways of tapping into that diaspora. I share this with you though, Selvin. I'm extremely happy with the unity movement, but I wished the unity movement was really between the two original parties, the PNC, the PPP.
That would be my wish, because that was Chetty's wish and that was Burnham's wish at a particular point in time in their lives. Having said that, it is happening between the AFC and the PNC, having said that. But it would have been more beautiful. And that is a segue into me saying that I would love to see the PVP joining a unity government, really not remaining in the opposition. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see them joining a unity government so we can really be one people, one nation, and one destiny.
Perhaps it's in the cards, my brother. Perhaps it's in the
I
cards.
sincerely hope so.
Because necessity can be quite inventive, you know.
Indeed, I concur.
What is your personal commitment to unity development in Guyana?
My service, I would serve in as best as a capacity as I can to serve this country. I spent 34 years in the military and that service to the nation. I mortgaged my life for 34 years. At any point in time, I could have lost my life for this country because I laid it down for this country. I had it mortgaged to the people for 34 years. So I was given national service all the time, and I would serve the government. I would serve my country in the best way I can. I would work with this government, the new government that is, to help develop Guyana. My philosophical underpinnings do not resonate with the current government, so I can't work directly with the government. But I can still develop Guyana. I still work with the people in this country and develop Guyana.
You know, time is always creeping up on us. But I want to ask you this question. The morning after, well, since you're a forward thinker, let's go to 100 days after. Let's say there is a change in government and the unity government or unity party is installed.
Yes.
What do you predict? What would you like to see? And bearing in mind we have to be patient. But what would you like to see in the first 100 days?
In the first 100 days, Selwyn, I would like to see I would like to sit back and look at the people of this country and be convinced that they believe and they are seeing changes in Guyana. I would like to see a strong effort directed at the people of this country, the working class, a strong effort, strong indications to the class that tells them clearly, undisputedly, that this government is for them. I would like to see actions coming from the president and his government and his cabinet directed towards the working people of this country. Because in 100 days, you can't just simply change the life of people. We need to set the foundations for decades to come. We need to set the foundations so the economy changes and is retooled to serve the working class of this country. So in essence, I'm saying I'd like to see and feel convinced that within 100 days, that is, that people will recognize that this government is now working in their favor. And perhaps the single thing the government can do is to create and find jobs for people in this country and to give them hope that if you don't have a job in 100 days, then you'll have a job in 200 days. But to try to detail it now, I think would be a little difficult. I think the overarching picture is that the voter must feel confident that the government is working for him. At the end of 100 days, he must feel the government is working for him.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And for taking time off of your so very busy schedule and sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. Thank you so very much, Rear Admiral.
Thank you for having me, Selvin.
You're welcome. God bless. Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.